and welcome to yet another episode of India Africa Talk Show. This is episode 19, and today we are talking about the presence of Indian diaspora in Africa and its cultural impact and legacy. And to talk more about that, we have a group of three eminent panelists today with me. I would like to first introduce Mr. Ajay Alwa. Mr. Alwa is head of sales of Symphony Technologies and has more than 3 decades of experience in the IT sector. He is currently based in Kenya and has traveled extensively in Africa in various countries as part of his work profile. And apart from being a IT professional, he's also working with the governments in several African countries in the education sector. Mr. Alwa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Great. Our second panelist today is Ms. Nandini Tanya Lalmon. Nandini is joining us from Mauritius, and she is a 5th generation of Indian diaspora in Mauritius, and she is a lawyer by profession and an activist in Mauritius. Nandini, welcome to the show, and we would like to know more about your experiences in Africa in today's show.
Thank you.
Our third panelist today is Ms. Aisha Tindela Fall. Aisha is from Senegal and is currently pursuing her higher studies here in India. Aisha is currently studying in Ashoka University, and she's pursuing a major in political science and a minor in international relations. Aisha, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Friends, we all know that India and Africa, our relations, both commercial and cultural, goes back to several thousand years. And during these almost 3,000-year-old relations, a lot of Indians came to Africa for various reasons, be it the forced migration of Indians, be it to work as laborers in the fields, be it as businessmen, be it for educational or any other purposes. Currently, in the contemporary African continent, we have more than 3 million Indians present in 40 plus countries. So that's the geographical spread of Indian diaspora. And in several countries, Indian diaspora is playing a very dominant role politically, culturally, economically, and diplomatically also. Today in our show, we would like to focus on the cultural aspect of Indian and African relations. How Indians who are present in Africa, what kind of cultural interaction and assimilation they have with the African communities there in respective countries. First of all, I would like to go to Mr. Alwa. Mr. Ajay Alwa is there in Kenya from last 8 years. And before that, he has also stayed and worked in several other African countries. Mr. Alwa, we would like to start the program with your experience of staying in Africa. 8 years is quite a long time, and what kind of what kind of Africa you have seen? Because in India, a lot of people have certain preconceived notions about Africa, and I'm sure you must be having before moving to Africa. How those notions changed? What kind of positive transformation changed in your thinking about Africa? And today, when you look back, when you started your journey in Africa, how you will describe your journey to our viewers today, Mr. Alwa?
Thank you, Narendra, and good evening to all the viewers and the panelists sitting over here. A very exciting and nice question. So typically coming from India, spending almost 25 years in the industry, and when I was suddenly asked to come to Africa, so it was it was a great moment to come out of India and work with all the experience I had to develop the various opportunities, professional opportunities I had received, especially in the space of education. But there are always preconceived ideas which can be referred to the media, people who are not clear what actually is happening in Africa from the perspective of culture, from the perspective of the industrial growth, interactions, art. A lot of things happening over here, but for an outsider coming into this continent is not a comfortable journey because of these preconceived negative notions which are there. So I was also as a typical citizen coming from India, coming to Africa, was not a comfortable thought. But the day I landed in Nairobi, somewhere in 2012, in the month of April, when I landed in the airport, and I had a very different feel of Africa. I mean, the people were so hospitable at the airport, very welcoming, very helpful. That was my first feel, and it made me very comfortable when I landed over there. And when I walked out of the airport, when I saw the nature, the weather, I came with a conceived idea that maybe it's going to be hot, it's going to be sultry, but the weather was pleasant. I was looking for help to find out my transportation. People were so helpful. And it just suddenly changed my total perception. And my entire journey from the last 8 years has been very, very exciting. I find people. I spent a lot of time in Kenya and Ethiopia working over there, though I traveled to various parts of Africa. Basically, the entire East Africa, the southern part of Africa, and the central part of Africa. But overall, what I've seen was there is always warmth in the way they would like to, interact with people. Inquisitiveness to know about skills, about culture, or about working culture, or in how do you learn newer facilitation, maybe in the space of education. But I come as an education expert. So they were very interactive, and the inquisitiveness was something which I was very impressed upon. They want to learn, and learning is something which was driven, because what I saw about the Africans, I mean, it's a very young country, and most of them want to become entrepreneurs. And what I understand from the study done by British Council some time back was 75% of the young Africans want to become entrepreneurs. It's unlike India, where generally people look for employment, then probably get into consulting, and then start the journey of as an entrepreneur. That doesn't happen in Africa. The young Africans are very clear that they would like to probably work for some time, but hone their skills. Then they are very clear in their life that they want to become entrepreneurs, build up business, or build up an empire and grow. That's the mindset. So they are very inquisitive about learning. This is from my experience from the professional perspective.
Okay.
Coming on from the cultural perspective, I think there are a lot of similarities between India and the entire African continent for the perception of food, art and culture, music. If you talk about the Bollywood industry and the Nigerian Nollywood industry, there is a lot of interaction taking place. So that's my entire view, both personally and from the professional life. Yeah. And if you look at the wildlife also, India also has got a lot of wildlife, and there is a lot of wildlife in Africa. So I see a lot of interaction, a lot of similarity, and even the weather conditions are similar. So and if you look at the entire industrial trend and industrial growth of India, it's started as a family-run business, and from a family-run business, it has become a professional business. And that's the same curve what we see in Africa. So I have touched upon both my professional experience.
That's great. I mean, I'm really happy that you talked about the wildlife also, because generally you miss out the wildlife part. And both Africa and India have a very vibrant, wildlife, and that is one of the, one of the identifying key features for Africa. Coming to you, Ms. Tanya Dalmon. Tanya joining us from Mauritius here. Tanya, you are the 5th generation of diaspora in your country. Tell us your experience of growing up in Africa, and if it's possible, do share some insights about your family, how your family came to Africa long time back, and how then this whole journey of your ancestors started here in Africa and Mauritius.
Sure. So I am 5th generation Mauritian here. So my great grandfather migrated from India to Mauritius It was actually during the colonial period. So during that time, we were under the British rule, and at the same time, India was also under the British rule, and huge parts of continental Africa as well. So while Indian immigrants were brought from India to Mauritius to cultivate the land, primarily to grow sugarcane, we also had Black people coming from continental Africa, but they were brought in as slaves. However, Black people and Indian immigrants work together a lot of the time. And over the years, this kind of resulted into a melting pot of the two cultures. So the language that we speak in Mauritius is actually kind of a blend of African languages and French and English. And a lot of our resulting culture in terms of food, music, is also a blend of all of that. So when Mauritius was first start when civilization started in Mauritius, we didn't have any indigenous population. So all of us at the moment are descendants of immigrants. So in a certain sense, we all belong here, but we also have cultures that come from different countries. I myself have grown up with a blend of cultures, and Mauritius is heavily, like, the majority of our population is of Indian descent. So our culture is heavily influenced by the Indian customs and traditions. For example, we celebrate the majority of festivals that are also celebrated in India, and most of us practice Indian religions, and even in our way of dressing and the food as well. However, I cannot deny that there has been an influence on our culture by the African culture. So our food is not typically Indian food. It is a blend of Indian food and African food. That being said, I would say that given that we have a shared past of British colony, and both Africa and India have been victim of this plundering of resources, I would join my fellow speaker Ajay in saying that we also have a lot of cross-cutting issues that we need to work together, and we need to enhance the collaboration between the two, India and Africa, so that both cultures can actually emerge, because both were very rich cultures before colonization, and unfortunately a lot of resources were plundered, resulting in a lot of issues at the moment. Although I would agree with what Ajay said, because as part of the Indian diaspora, I was selected to visit India in January in 2019, and that was part of the Know India program, which is a program set up by the Indian government for Indian diaspora and young diaspora, actually, so people from 18 to 30. And we were brought to India as part of an exchange scheme so that we could learn about how India actually has evolved in terms of education, culture, technology. And it was a huge eye opener because, like Ajay, he moved from India to Africa and he had all of these preconceived notions about Africa. I, from Africa, had all of these preconceived notions about India because this is what was shown in the media. We're showing like people live in poverty, they don't have water, everyone is just walking around in very shabby clothing. But when I landed in India, it was very far from that image that I had in my mind. And like India is very advanced in a lot of things. And one thing that really impressed me was internet connectivity, because they have like high speed internet high up in the mountains. That is really impressive. So I feel like India has really set the pace for development in a lot of fields. And this was a huge eye opener for me. So I feel like similarly, Africa has a lot of lessons that we could learn and also share so that we could counter all of those effects that we're still suffering from due to colonization.
Yeah. So where all you traveled in India when you came last year?
Sorry?
Where all you traveled, in which cities?
Oh, so I went to Mumbai, Delhi, a little bit of Gujarat,
Okay.
and also the northern part. So that was Manali and Dharamshala.
Oh, you've seen. I mean, you must have got a good idea of the diversity of Indian subcontinent. Yeah.
Yes, like
Great.
I have heard that India is kind of like a whole world in a country, And that is totally true. It's like you could just go to India and you would totally mean like you've traveled the whole world, because there's so much diversity within. I thought Mauritius was diverse before I traveled. And when I landed there, it was like just one country and so many different cultures, ways of dressing, food, languages, music, everything is so diverse. And it was a huge, huge experience because I went there, I was there in January and February. So at some point it was really, really cold, but I got to see the snow, which was one of the best experiences I've had as an islander, because we never have snow in Mauritius. And everyone, like I just said, in Africa, I experienced the same thing in India. Everyone was so hospitable. I like, even though they didn't know me and my friends, they were just bent over backwards to help us, helping us get the best deals, helping us with accommodation and traveling. It was, and also, let me tell you, best food I've had in my entire life. I'm still craving for that. So I can't wait
Great.
for Bangladesh to
Now,
reopen.
that's so wonderful to hear all these positive stories from someone whose family went to Mauritius several years back, and now she's coming back and having a very positive, viewpoint and experience in here in India. That brings me to the second part of our discussion, where both our panelists have touched upon earlier also. Uh, you know, both Africa and India in the last 40-50 years, when African countries started getting independence, India also got independence, after that, there was a lull in the kind of relationship, that was developing between Africa and India. And suddenly in the last 10 years, we have seen a kind of, a more, uh, you know, high-paced development, high-paced relationship building diplomatically between India and several African countries. But my question is more about the cultural assimilation between Indians who are living in African countries. What kind of, how closely knit are Africans and Indians, or they are still living as completely different communities in the same city or in the same country? Have you seen any kind of festivities where both Indians and Africans are participating? Have you been part of those festivities? Are Indians open to share their cultural cultural history, their cultural festivals, their language, their cuisine with Africans? Are Africans ready or interested in knowing more about Indians there in their countries, or becoming a part of their festivals? Or it's a kind of a taboo topic still there? Maybe we can start with Aisha, with your experience in Senegal. I know the Indian diaspora community is not very strong. It's a very small community there. But, have you seen in your country any kind of, intermingling with Indian people there in Senegal, or your friends, or in the larger, neighborhood or somewhere? Or you have just heard that, that there is some, Indian community who was staying there, but you have never got any chance to interact with them culturally? Aisha.
Yeah, actually, thank you for your question. I am from Senegal, which is like in West Africa, and the interactions India has had with East Africa and South Africa haven't been that spread in West Africa, apart from Nigeria and few other countries. So in Senegal, we do not have a large Indian community. However, thanks to Bollywood, the Indian culture is very, very well known in Senegal. When I talk to people back home and I tell them that I'm from India, they start like speaking in Hindi, literally knowing the language like from songs, Bollywood songs and other things, while me in India, I do not have that level in Hindi. So that actually shows that interactions that have happened just through media, because Bollywood took a whole, like it was very prevalent in Senegal to the point where it even inserted fashion. In terms of there was like a whole trend of us having like colorful kurtas and wearing them during Eid, like Muslim celebrations, since the majority of our population is Muslim. So those are like the few interactions that my country and some other countries in West Africa, even in Nigeria, have had with India without even having like a great community, like a great Indian community. So that shows that there is like at least the basis for interaction and cooperation, which I think is really important for us as youngsters, because even before coming to India, I do have some notions of how the life is there. And I think the reason why Bollywood actually was quite widespread in our communities is because we saw similarities in the cultures. So I remember my mom watching a lot of Bollywood movies, like she's a fan of Bollywood, but she would always relate like with the stories of, you know, having a mother-in-law or a father-in-law who doesn't like you, or like the whole yeah, the whole noise about like around the bride, the weddings, and all of that. So like
The
just
typical Saas Bahu serials that we have in India in the prime time. And that's
okay,
called, and they are quite popular in Africa too. Okay,
yes,
great, great.
yeah, and you also see the dance even transferring. Like we have dance groups that are like purely dedicated to Indian dance, and some TV shows that are called like India in Senegal, or like just talking about Bollywood actresses and actors and what the news are on Bollywood. So I think that's an interesting cultural exchange that we do see
Yeah.
in like in Africa.
Great. Coming to you, Mr. Ajay, Aisha has very well pointed out the influence of Bollywood and television, and even on fashion in Senegal, you know. And so that's the kind of influence that media has done. Media has created that kind of image. That kind of bonds have been created between Senegal and India. But I would like to know more from you, because you have been working there for several years now. Have you got any opportunity, apart from work, to interact with local African communities there, to participate in some of their maybe festivals, or participate in some of their cultural programs? And do you think Africans, apart from being very warm and hospitable and good in hospitality, are they open to inviting people from other communities, and especially Indians, to be part of their festivities?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, there are quite a lot of, very harmony driven people. Music, culture, movies, dance, food is something which people enjoy, and this all goes hand to hand. So entertainment is a big industry here. People believe in working hard, and post work they like to have some good time. It could be a family time, or it could be a friends getting together post office hours. And generally Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is all about friend time or family time. And I've been a part of all these events, let it be a family based event, or a friend based event, or probably an event, a food event, or a fashion event, or probably some kind of a get together for interacting on business. Yes, there has been a lot of I've been a part of all these events, and it has been very exciting that most of them want to know how do we cook, because Indian cuisine has been very popular. Because we have Punjabis, we have Sindhis, we have South Indians who have been staying here for almost 7 to 8 decades. Gujarati is saying 7 to 8 decades. And when they have when they contribute to the economy as an industry, there are a lot of people working from Africa. So you know getting to understand about food, getting to understand about festivity, mingling together has been a part and parcel of the system. And I see lot of interaction. And I myself like cooking as a hobby. And I have got a lot of African friends who come over to my place, or I go to their place, and we try to learn each other's food culture. So it's been a amazing stuff. Let me talk about Ethiopia. When I went to Ethiopia, one way of getting into the Ethiopian work culture is not a professional relationship. It's more of a family relationship. So if you have to be doing business, if you have to be doing work, you need to know, if you have got staff members or employees, you need to be knowing their family members first. So you first get introduced to the entire family, be a part of their Ethiopian coffee culture, get to know all, and then there is an acceptance. And that's how there is interaction, there is personal interaction, there is cultural interaction, and there is also a business interaction. So that's my experience. And let me tell you, I simply enjoyed and feel very blessed being a part of this entire system, which is highly hospitable, and just like living their life the fun way. So it's unlike India. India, sometimes things go very monotonous. Everyone are trying to go at a fast pace, trying to achieve. But what I see here is, while you work hard, you need to also enjoy, and that's something which actually is a very good thing as a part of a growing development continent. That's my experience over here.
Great, great. Coming to you, Ms. Tanya, you earlier talked about your experience of growing up in Africa. Culturally, what kind of fusion do you see has happened between India and Africa in terms of maybe food, in terms of maybe other cultural aspects like dance or festivities? Do you think a strong presence of both Indian and African elements in the culture that you have there in Mauritius? Or it's largely Indian because Indian diaspora is quite dominant there?
It is actually, Indian diaspora is quite dominant, so it is heavily influenced by Indian culture. For example, not just me, but all of my peers growing up, we were told we could either be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or a failure. So as a result, all of us have all of these mainstream degrees. And then after graduation, we kind of go into whatever fields we feel like doing. It's like you just do that because you've grown up with so much pressure to achieve high grades, and there is a lot of pressure after you've turned, like, say 25 to get married. People start looking for grooms or brides for you, so it's still heavily influenced by the Indian culture. So I totally relate to what Aisha said. Like, our lives are not that far-fetched from those Indian serials at times, but we still do have a lot of cooperation with India in terms of education primarily. And at the moment, one thing that is really starting to take off is the iLearn platform from the government of India, where African students get to have full scholarships to study at Indian universities. And the courses are 100% online, but then you take the examinations in your own country. So I feel like
sorry to intervene. So this scholarship is for all African students or only for Indian diaspora?
All African students.
Okay.
So everyone who is on the African continent, born here, can actually avail of those scholarships. And I feel like this is a huge step forward from India to help bring that expertise that they have to the African continent, because a lot of us at the moment are unable to travel. So this is huge in terms of having access to quality education, because the universities that are present on that platform are some of the best and highly ranked in India and across the world. So we can have this assurance in terms of quality of the courses and the teachers that we are dealing with. And this is a huge plus because we don't even have to pay for the courses. As long as you're eligible, you get the scholarship and you take the examinations in your own country. So you have the advantage of studying at your own pace and then taking the examinations and getting a degree that is highly accredited from an Indian institution. So I feel like India is also doing a lot of work in trying to foster that cooperation that we have, and not just culturally, but also in terms of tech as well, because India has had huge investments, and I'm talking here for the Mauritian continent as well, for the Mauritian country. A lot of investments that have taken place in Mauritius in terms of tech have Indian expertise behind them. And we have set up our financial services industry here, and a lot of that has been with help from the Indian government. So we do have this bilateral cooperation that is really, really strong here.
Yeah, okay, great. So that brings me to the third part of today's show. A lot of young Indians who are there in Africa, like Tanya, who is there from because she's the fifth generation of Indian diaspora there. Apart from that, there are a lot of young people who have decided to move to Africa for businesses, or maybe they are the first or second generation of diaspora who are there. Mr. Ajay, you have worked in Africa for quite some time. Do you think this is the best time for Africa, especially for the youth, in Africa, both Indian and African. And do you think this is the time where they have a lot of opportunities in terms of good careers, in terms of higher education, in terms of utilizing their skills, maybe be it entrepreneurial skills or other skills in the corporate sector? How would you comment on the current landscape in Africa for the youth who are there?
Interesting question. And pretty excited to answer this particular question. I think what we would see once this COVID lockdown becomes a semi-lockdown environment to an open environment, I think there will be a huge change in the way Africa would work. Now, let me put the reasons in a very sliced manner. One, India went through a paper-based education and migrated to a digital based education system. There are a lot of language related issues because rural India still adoption to English is a huge problem. But if you look at Africa, most of the people are predominantly either English speaking or probably French speaking or probably Portuguese speaking. And for them adapting onto a digital platform, the transformation has been very easy as compared to the Indian environment, education environment. So that will be a speed of adoption. So transforming into a e-learning space in terms of learning or in terms of finding out mentors to help them get into the industry in a better way, interacting with people, because what do you want as a young individual? Right kind of content to learn. That's what Tanya was speaking about, and Aisha was seconding it. Right kind of teachers, right kind of digital labs which are available today, technology expertise, process-based expertise, all this becomes accessible on a digital platform. And let me tell you, COVID is today, yeah, it's negative. It's pushing the economy back. But let me tell the way forward. COVID is going to take the entire industry, forcing the entire industry to go to a digital format. Be it education, be it where the business has been done. And let me tell you, remote working will be the way of life. And let me tell you, Africa, the way it is growing, because of the adoption and inquisitiveness for learning, would become the fastest growing continent. And it's a matter to watch. One is the colonized system to independence. Yeah, the Indian diaspora has played a role. I mean, a lot of investment has become from the government. Student exchange programs, cultural exchange programs has really, transformed the way things are being done, both professionally and in the space of culture. So you would see a big change happening, the way things are being done. And today, you got access for everything, access to teachers, content, mentors, industrial expertise is all available. You don't have to travel. Like Tanya was saying, I don't have to travel. It's all available. And let me tell you, most of the funding, which is coming from the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the MasterCard Foundation, the YALI program, which has been very famous in Africa, Young African Learning Initiative, where the ex-president of Barack Obama has played an important role of bringing in this platform for developing Africans. So that has also created a lot of interaction between the industry and the people, students who want to get into the industry as an entrepreneur or probably as an employee. So there is going to be a big change, and it's going to be a very fast change, and that's something to be watched out. A is technology, B is connectivity and accessibility. That's a big difference we will see in the days to come.
Okay, so COVID-19 would open a kind of a new door for Africa, where the fast change transformation would be order of the day. Coming to you, Aisha, we're talking about the opportunities for young, for today's youth, whether African or Indians who are there in Africa. Do you think this is the best time to be in Africa?
I do think it is because what India and Africa share is like a history of colonization and also being part of the third world country, which we should really focus on in terms of development and all things, whether they are intellectual, technological, all advancements have been mostly focusing on the third world, on the first world, especially the West. And I think the opportunities and the resources are not exhausted in like India and Africa. And we do have a large population and a young population, which we have to invest in. Like India, Africa is one of the youngest population, and I think that's some potential that we really need to work on. And since India is one of like the most the countries that are actually coming in and developing, then there's so much that we can share, so much that we can exchange on. So there are opportunities both for young Africans in India and for young Indians in Africa. And it's true, like a lot of Africans are coming in India to study, and just getting that knowledge and bringing it back to Africa is very important. But I do think that we should also have young Indians coming to Africa and immersing, especially in the cultural part. And also there's like so much potential when it comes to building structures, coming into the technological part. I do think that there's a lot of potential, enough potential for young Indians to also come to Africa and try to expand on that, because that will also benefit India as a country.
Yeah.
And I do think there's also like minimal cultural interaction when it comes to Indians knowing about Africa. And I think that maybe traveling to Africa and actually on the work side will also help in that cultural interaction.
Sure. And that could be one way of doing it. And second could be, youngsters like Tanya who are there in Africa, they can become ambassadors of, the real Africa.
Yes.
For Indians, because Indians have a lot of misconceptions about Africa. They have not seen what kind of changes and transformations have happened in Africa in last 1 decade. So they can be the real bridges, and especially Aisha, the kind like you are there in India, you can when you are there in India, you can also spread more information and awareness about Africa among your peer group, among your friends here in India, because that's how we provide information to two countries, and we share that the kind of cultural roots we have, the kind of cultural similarities we have. That is something which people must know, because that's how we build cultures, that's how we build people to people interaction. Coming to you, Ms. Tanya, that's the last point of our show. You have grown up there, you have studied there in Mauritius. Do you think Mauritius in particular and Africa in general provides enough opportunities today for youth to grow and explore their true potential?
I would say yes, and I would agree with Aisha in the sense that we have our own particularities in terms of India as a country and Africa as a continent. And lately, there has been, of course, this wide momentum around South-South cooperation for the continent of Asia and Africa. And from my studies, I have noticed that there is a lot of focus on Western-based models. So and in that process, a lot of young people tend to base their studies, for example, or everything else in terms of lifestyle, in terms of business models, in terms of how they want to go ahead with development of their own country. Everything else is based on Western models. Not to say that Western models are not good, but before you adapt them to the African context or the Indian context, you have to analyze that specific context first and just take whatever is good from that model and transpose part of it to your context and then adapt it with considering the economic situation. For example, if you're transposing a model from a first world country to a country that has just recovered from conflict, this is not going to work. So you have to consider the particularities of the people. For example, if women are still suffering from certain dangers that have been caused by the conflict, you have to factor in all of those and develop your own model. Of course, inspiration is always a good thing, but I feel like young people in Africa and India don't have enough confidence that they have the resources that are required, and they have all of everything that they need already to develop their own models that are best suited for their own countries. So I feel like we need to have this momentum to raise awareness among young people. And I would like to agree with Ajay on this point when he said earlier that young Africans are so motivated to become entrepreneurs now. And I feel like this is a huge plus for the continent, because young Africans are starting to recognize that a lot of our resources, like Aisha mentioned, are still untapped. So we just need to exploit those resources and bring about development for the continent in our own specific way, because we have our own specific climates, we have our own specific economies, our own specific resources, and our cultures. So there's no point in trying to erode all of that to copy models that have worked well for other countries and expect them to work for us, because that's never going to happen. So of course we should take whatever is best and has already been tried and tested, but also bring about innovation, keeping in mind our own context.
Great. I think that's a wonderful point. Before we end today's show, Tanya, I think you're rightly pointing out that blindly imitating Western models, it's history now. Now, I think youth in India and Africa are capable enough to develop their own models in their specific context, which will be more output oriented and which will deliver the kind of results the specific environments, the specific countries, the specific situations need. I think that's a wonderful point. That brings me to the end of this episode. Mr. Ajay Alwa, thank you so much for joining us today from Nairobi and sharing those inputs about the kind of transformations that have taken place in Africa in the last one decade, and also pointing out that the post-COVID world will see a lot of positive transformation technologically and culturally in the coming years for Africa. Thank you so much.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you so much.
Ms. Nandini Tanya Lalmon, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing the kind of linkages that you have been trying to develop between India and Africa, and the wonderful experience you had on your maiden visit to India last year. And I'm sure people like you who are young, who are very much connected with their roots in India and who are there in Africa as part of the diaspora would play a very important role and very influential role in changing and transforming India-Africa relations in the coming years. So thank you so much again for joining us today in the show.
It was a pleasure.
Aisha Fall, it was a pleasure having you in the show today. And I'm sure when you go back to your country after finishing your studies here in India, you will be able to create a different kind of view and mindset about India. And I'm sure Africans would have a fresh impression about India, and you will be able to create new bridges between India and Africa as a young professional in your country. So thank you so much for joining us today in the show.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Hello. Friends, it has been a quite interesting discussion today, and I'm sure the 3 million plus Indian diaspora that is there in 40 plus African countries has a tremendous potential to transform the entire continent in the coming years. And by doing that, it will also help in building stronger relationship between India and Africa. And when I say building bridges between India, it's not just about the technology, it's not just about the investment. I'm also talking about cultural bridges between India and Africa. A symphony that would be created where I'm sure Africans and Indians would be celebrating festivities together, participating in each other's programs and various festivals together, sharing our own cuisine, sharing our stories, and discussing more about our shared cultural roots. So thank you once again for watching this show. Next week, we'll be back with another important topic about India and Africa. Till then, goodbye and good night.
Thank you so much. Good night to all of you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.